The most painful suffering had come to David, a life of deadlock, injustices constantly plaguing him. Sometimes he wanted to give up, but fate forced him to endure. He often wondered, he had tried so hard. Why wasn't God helping him? But little did David know, with every step he took, God was watching over him and silently helping him, so that one day he would break the very burden right before the eyes of the man who placed it upon him. The scent of grease and metallic dust was the fragrance of David Morales' life. It clung to his worn-out overalls, seeped into the creases of his hands, and settled deep within his soul. For 12 years, the rhythmic, thunderous clang of the presses at Keller Manufacturing had been his daily soundtrack, a constant reminder of his purpose, to provide for his wife, Elena, and their 8-year-old daughter, Sophia. David was a man sculpted by humility and hard work. He was a quiet, unassuming figure, his gentle eyes often fixed on the task at hand, his every motion a testament to his dedication. But beneath that calm exterior lay a desperate anxiety, a gnawing fear that pulsed in time with the machines. It was the fear for Sophia. A small but devastating hole in her heart meant every cough, every pale flush of her cheeks was a dagger to his own. The surgery she needed was a fortune, a mountain of gold that seemed impossible to climb on his meager wages. Mr. Keller, the owner, was a man who saw no dignity in labor, only profit. He was a barrel-chested tyrant with a booming voice and a scowl that could curdle milk. The unwritten rules of his factory were simple: work until your hands bleed, ask for nothing, and keep your mouth shut. David, like the other immigrant workers, was paid a pittance, a fraction of what they were promised. Overtime was mandatory, a quiet, unpaid extortion disguised as a favor. One sweltering afternoon, David found the courage, fueled by a sleepless night and a doctor's grim prognosis, to approach Keller. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Mr. Keller, sir, my daughter, she needs an operation. I've worked so many extra hours. Could you please pay me for the overtime? Just this once?" Keller's response was a harsh, dismissive laugh that echoed in the vast hall. He leaned in, his face a mask of condescending fury. "Listen, Morales, you're a lucky man to have this job. The streets are full of people like you, just begging for scraps. You want more? You want to complain? Fine. Tomorrow, I'll find a new beggar to take your place. Now get back to work." The threat hung in the air, heavy and final. David's hope, a tiny flicker in the darkness, was instantly extinguished. He walked back to his station, his shoulders slumped, the weight of the world settling back upon him. That night, as Elena held him, he wept silently. "We have nothing, Elena. We have nothing left." "We have God," she whispered, her voice soft but unwavering. "We still have Him, David. He sees you. He hears your prayers. He will provide." Her faith was a quiet beacon that guided him through the despair. Every night before he slept, he would kneel beside their bed and pray, not for a miracle, but for the strength to endure. His silence in the face of Keller's cruelty was not a sign of weakness. It was a conversation with a higher power, a desperate plea for a path he could not yet see. The calm before the storm was short-lived. A week later, a catastrophic malfunction shut down the main press. A vital, incredibly expensive component was shattered. Keller stormed into the factory, a volcano of rage, his eyes scanning the terrified faces of the workers until they landed on David. "Morales!" he bellowed. "You were working on this machine. My foreman said he saw you tampering with it, trying to fix something you weren't authorized to touch. You broke it. You hear me? You broke a $250,000 piece of equipment." David's heart hammered against his ribs. "No, sir, that's not true. I was just cleaning it, like I was told." "Liar!" Keller's face was a mottled crimson. "You're fired, and not only that, you're going to pay for the damages. I'll sue you for every penny you and your little family have." A cold dread spread through David's veins. He looked at his fellow workers, men he had shared lunch breaks with, men whose families were also on the brink. Their eyes were lowered, fixed on their shoes, afraid to meet his gaze. Not one person dared to speak up, to say they had seen the foreman, a bitter man named Frank, working on the machine earlier that day. Their silence was a testament to the fear that bound them all. David was utterly, terrifyingly alone. He stood there, the foreman's lie a physical blow, his future evaporating with every heartbeat. Desperate, he wandered aimlessly that night, the weight of his family's survival pressing down on him. He considered running, just disappearing, leaving this unbearable life behind. But where would he go? How could he face Elena and Sophia after such a betrayal? He found himself at the old stone church, the one with the cracked bell that rang with a lonely, mournful sound. He knelt in a back pew, his head in his hands, not praying so much as surrendering to the void. It was there that she found him, a woman with kind eyes and a briefcase. Her name was Maria Lopez. She was a pro bono lawyer volunteering at the church's community outreach program. David's quiet sobs were the only sound in the empty sanctuary. Maria approached him, her voice a gentle inquiry. "Sir, are you all right?" David, hesitant at first, poured out his story. The exploitation, the sick daughter, the false accusation, the threat of ruin. He spoke of his prayers, his unwavering faith, and his crippling fear that God had abandoned him. Maria listened, not with pity, but with a growing fire in her eyes. "David," she said firmly, "God has not abandoned you. He has placed you in my path. I can help." The legal battle began. It was a tedious, grueling process. Mr. Keller, with his expensive lawyers and his confident sneer, seemed untouchable. But Maria was relentless. She spent weeks gathering evidence, sifting through mountains of paperwork. She found inconsistencies in the payroll records, doctored numbers, and clear proof of illegal wage theft. She also knew that the case needed more than just numbers. It needed a voice, a witness. She started with the bravest among David's colleagues, a young man named Luis. He was terrified, but Maria reminded him of the freedom they could all achieve if they stood together. Slowly, one by one, others came forward, their fear giving way to a shared quiet anger. They had all been cheated, all been abused. They watched the security footage with Maria, their hearts pounding, as they saw Frank, the foreman, make a faulty repair to the machine just hours before David arrived. Finally, the day came. The courtroom was a stark, intimidating arena. Mr. Keller sat across the aisle, his face a smug mask of overconfidence. He testified first, his voice dripping with condescension, as he painted a picture of David as an incompetent, dishonest man who was trying to extort money from an honest businessman. David was called to the stand. His heart was a drum in his chest. Maria gave him a reassuring nod. "Just tell the truth, David." Keller's lawyer, a slick-haired man with a shark-like smile, began his cross-examination. "Mr. Morales, you stayed silent for years, didn't you? You didn't complain about the wages. You didn't question the hours. Why? Was it because you were afraid? Or was it because you were secretly taking advantage of my client's generosity?" David's voice was hoarse with emotion. I needed the job. And when you were caught, when you were finally held accountable for your negligence, you suddenly found a voice, didn't you? You found a lawyer to spin a tale of persecution. This is all a fabrication, isn't it? A lie to save yourself?" The lawyer sneered. The room held its breath. David looked at the judge, at Keller's smug face, and then his eyes seemed to find something far beyond the confines of the courtroom. His gaze seemed to soften, to fill with a light that had nothing to do with this earthly battle. He spoke, his voice now clear and strong, a voice no one had ever heard before. "You thought I was powerless because I kept silent, but silence is not weakness. It was prayer, and prayer gave me strength to face you today." The words hung in the air, a spiritual thunderclap that silenced the entire courtroom. Keller's sneer faltered. Maria then presented the evidence. The meticulous records of illegal wages, the testimonies of the other workers, and finally, the damning security footage that clearly showed Frank, not David, tampering with the machine. The truth, once hidden in the shadows, was laid bare for all to see. Keller's face, once so arrogant, turned ashen. His lies, his cruelty, his entire empire of exploitation began to crumble. The judge's gavel struck the wood with a final echoing sound. David had won. He was awarded substantial compensation for the years of illegal wages plus damages. As the courtroom erupted in quiet relief, David's gaze fell on Keller, who sat slumped in his chair, defeated, his face a mask of bitter, uncomprehending rage. He walked over to him, his hand still trembling slightly, and in the gesture that transcended justice, he extended one. "I forgive you," David said, his voice a soft, steady whisper, "not because you deserve it, but because God set me free from hate." A tear rolled down David's cheek as he looked at Maria, at his wife Elena, and at the faces of his colleagues, now filled with hope and gratitude. The silence had not been weakness. The silence had been a sanctuary where his faith had grown. It was the quiet, constant prayer that had given him the strength to overcome not just injustice, but the bitter poison of resentment. Days later, Sophia underwent a successful heart surgery. David watched her sleep, her breathing now a quiet, rhythmic hum. The victory was not just his. It was a victory for every man and woman who had been silenced. His story was a testament to the belief that faith does not make our burdens lighter, but it gives us the strength to carry them until they break the power of those who inflict them. And in the end, it's not the thunder of justice that brings true peace, but the quiet whisper of forgiveness.